So over the years, I've done a lot of camping, and I've kind of settled on taking one of these four stoves every single time I go out. I don't usually try to take all four because that would be absurd. Each situation calls for usually a different stove, and I'm a little bit more of a jack of all trades camper, but I'll show you generally what the best option will be as far as backpacking, car camping, camping by yourself, camping with friends, and really what is too little stove and what is too much stove. And for each of these stoves, don't think of it particularly as the brand specific and more just kind of the type of stove. So we're going to be looking at a Coleman backpack stove, a Coleman single burner butane stove, and a Coleman propane two burner stove. Really, any brand will do. I tend to like Coleman. I know Camp Chef is a really good brand, and there's some other good brands out there. Some cheaper brands. I've seen plenty of people use the Walmart Ozark Trail stoves, and those work perfectly fine. They may buff it a little bit more in the wind, but for the most part, they just kind of work mostly the same. So the first stove here is going to be this Coleman backpacking stove. It collapses really nice. The stove breaks down pretty small. This is, of course, replaceable. More expensive stoves of this type usually have features where, like with the jet boil, you'll have the fuel kind of nests inside of a cup. I'll have it shown on screen. This is cheap. It works great. It is not self-igniting. That is a thing to watch for when it comes to these stoves, as not all of them will self-ignite. Now with this stove, works pretty good. I haven't had too many issues with this one. Now, contrary to popular belief, you can put a stove on top of here and it's pretty stable. Most of the flex here is from the bed of the pickup, this plastic here. But I can put a pan on here, and as long as there's something in the pan, it doesn't tend to lose its balance too much. And I have on a couple of occasions used a cast iron. Now, it's a little sketch on the truck tailgate here. Usually I would have a cutting board and I would just kind of put this on top of the cutting board or some other plate or a bench or the ground. I would argue it is the most stable on the ground, kind of what it's designed for. But this stove works really good. If you're worried about it being unstable, it is far more stable than you think. The other benefit that I really see with this one is it's cheap. The fuel canister is, I would like to say, between $4 and $8, depending on what size you get. This is a smaller size. They make ones that are probably about that tall. They do raise the height of the stove a little bit, but more fuel. The price point for these, this one was about $30 for the stovetop. But generally, you can go on Amazon or buy the Ozark Trail one from Walmart, and it's about $15, 15 to $18. And the Ozark Trail one I've used before, and it works perfectly fine. I would say it works almost exactly like this Coleman Peak. Now, some of the drawbacks to this stove. The obvious one, of course, is its size. It's not a very big stove. Yes, it does pack well, but there are three big disadvantages when it comes to this. Number one, you are cooking primarily on the ground, so your back health isn't exactly favorable. in this situation. Another one is you can't pack this away right away, just like any stove. It is going to be quite hot. So if you really got to get up in a hurry, I can still close one of my other bigger stoves and just kind of shove it away somewhere pretty easily. Maybe the Blackstone, not so much, but with gloves, sure. This one, it's really, no matter where I put it, it's going to burn whatever I put it against, so you have to wait for it to cool down. Thankfully, cools down quickly. The second drawback, of course, is wind. It's not very good in wind. It does tend to blow out. You'll have some wind come from the side, and it'll buffet this a lot. They do on some different models, and also just with like aftermarket stuff or some pans. They make ones that have little shrouds where it's a little bit better. Usually, you want to try to put something in front of it, like you can put a bag or a rock or a log or your tent, and then it's not so bad. But keep in mind, it does require some prep. On our second stove. Now, this second stove is probably my most used stove throughout the years. Now, with this single burner, I kind of got the side open here. Thankfully, it's still cold. This little lever here pops up and the canister comes out. Now, this stove, this is very easy to kind of just leave the fuel in, and it doesn't really try to rock on you once you have it closed, and it's just kind of ready to go. It does have a carrying case that it comes in that's like a hard shell plastic to protect it, and for the most part you just kind of press down this lever, turn this one has an igniter, most of them do, and it's stable. It'll sit on a bench, it'll sit on your lap. It doesn't really get that hot on the bottom. I cook it on top of plastic tables all the time, and it doesn't melt the table. And it's really good with my pan. So I can put my pan up here, cook some Bush's baked beans, and then it's really stable when it comes to my cast iron as well. Most of the time I do cook on this surface. So for this surface specifically, this is the smallest option that's stable on my tailgate. The little backpacking stove is just too small for my cast iron, which I do most of my cooking in. Now, the pros to this one, obviously it's going to be its size. This one is still pretty small. It doesn't take up as much space as something like a double burner will, and it's cheap. I think both this and the backpacking stove were under $50. I believe this one was around $40 when I got it. I'll add a price point of what it is. Now, some drawbacks to this one, of course, is you still do get some wind buffeting from the side. So kind of the previous kind of situation still applies. Fortunately, with this one, I like to take the carrying case and kind of add a little bit of an L, use it as a little bit of a structure for whatever pan I'm cooking on. That tends to block any and all wind that I have going towards it, and because it sits in this as a carrying case anyways, it's never not with me, and it's just really simple. The other drawback is while it does hold fuel inside of it, this usually only burns for about an hour and a half, depending on what level you have it turned up to. And it does require you to bring a fuel source that is generally not compatible with the rest of any propane equipment you might have already brought, like buddy heaters or any other propane accessories. So it kind of tends to need its own fuel, kind of like the backpacking stove does. Now, the Coleman has always been a classic stove. One thing you might notice is the Coleman design has not changed very much. This right here is a 1996 stove. There are stoves available for about $130 that are pretty much exactly the same thing as this, maybe with 3 burners, or I guess this one already has electric ignition. Some of the older ones didn't come with electric ignition, but I think that's pre like 1994ish. Now, this thing still works amazing. It has the same drawbacks as any other Coleman stove. So, with any other Coleman, you have to thread on a little bit here on the side. Thankfully, this one does kind of store inside of the stove itself. I wish my Blackstone would take a note out of that book, but anyways, here we are. We just kind of thread this real tight. Normally you would have a bottle that sits right here. I'll grab a bottle just so you can see what it looks like. So you would just take the bottle, undo the cap. This is threaded. This is threaded. You thread it in. You have propane. This lasts, I'd like to say 30-40 minutes on a ball of propane if you have it and you're cooking the whole time. Sometimes you can turn it on low and you can get it to cook for 15 minutes or an hour if you're just kind of simmering things. What I do instead for these propane accessories, I have a propane tank adapter. Connects on this end, threads into the stove on this end. This one will connect both to my Coleman propane stove and also my Blackstone stove, so that instead of having a pound of propane, I have 20 pounds of propane, and I usually don't have to think about refilling or running out of propane for at least a couple trips. Now, the biggest pro for a system like this is you can just turn on the propane, flip open a couple knobs, light it, and you have pretty much the same performance of a stovetop at your house. Plenty of stability, lots of wind coverage on the side, lots of heat. Not really any downsides as far as the cooking performance goes. The main downside to this is you have to hook it up to propane. Hooking up propane can be a little bit of a nuisance. It's not just set it and go. It only takes a minute to kind of set up, but for some people, the convenience of just being able to flick a switch and just go with butane just kind of makes them want that more. Personally, I don't mind it. With propane, if you use the same method that I'm doing with the hose hooked up to the 20-pound tank, it cost me about $20 to fill up my entire propane tank where I live, versus one of those bottles, which is a pound, not 20 pounds, is about $8 to $9 per bottle. So it really just kind of comes down to, do you want to pay $18 for 2 pounds of fuel, or would you rather go with a big tank, pay $20 for 20 pounds of fuel? Another thing to note is that you can buy these 1 pound propane kegs. These are about anywhere between 20 and $30 depending on how nice you want it to be. And these are filled at the same prices of if you were going to go fill up a big 20-pound tank. Obviously, it is bigger than the single burner Coleman, and it is bigger than the backpacking stove. It usually tends to be very worth it. And for most people that are watching this video, I would recommend them use the 2-burner Coleman stove, as the Blackstone stove is a little over the top. Now with this stove, I do tend to put this one away pretty hot. I've never had any downsides with this one when it comes to me doing that. You just kind of unhook everything, close it up, shove it in its leather bag, and then go. And there isn't really anything to worry about as far as it melting the leather. So, as far as packability, this just kind of goes behind my seat, my single cab pickup, and I've never really had too much issues as far as size constraints when it comes to this burner. Now, if I wanted something that took up less space on the tabletop, that's where kind of the single burner kind of comes into play, as far as if your table that you're cooking on is really, really cramped for space. But for the most part, this is about 1.5 size times bigger than the single burner stove. The only downside I would say to this specific burner would be that the fuel that you're taking with you does take up a lot of space if you're using a lot of the bottles, compared to if you're just storing one canister inside of the single burner stove and then only plan on cooking 1 day's worth of meals or food just for like the night and then the morning next, and then going back home. So here we have the Blackstone stove. This stove just so happens to be my most beloved and most hated stove on this list. Now, I love it to death. Every single time I have it set up, it is a blast to cook on. And when I'm cooking on it, I am actively thinking it is the best thing I have ever used. Unfortunately, every other time that I'm using this stove, whether I'm cleaning it, whether I'm transporting it, whether I'm hooking up, whether I'm moving it, I'm constantly reminded about how much of a piece of work this stove can be. Now, I say that as if I hate the stove. I don't hate the stove. I still use the stove and I love using the stove. But I really got to point out its negative points before I really get to the positives. Now, the first negative, of course, is its weight. This thing is heavy. It's completely solid cast iron top. This one does have a lid. The lid, thankfully, is not made out of cast iron. Um, I still take it down with me on like overlanding trips or off-road camping trips. I went down today. That's why you see that's a little dirty. I can hit some pretty big potholes, some big little divots. We had a little patch of mud we had to go through today, and it does jump around quite a bit. I do find myself tightening the legs a lot and keeping them tight so I don't break them off. But for the most part, I am very rough with this stove, and I probably am not a very good representative for what a normal person is going to do with a Blackstone inside of the back of their truck. Now, along with its weight, it takes a lot of gas to use, to warm up, to re-season, to clean. Um, I tend to go through 3 to 4 times as much gas than any other stove that's of this size, just because the cast iron takes a long time to heat up, and there's lots of steps in the process as far as cleaning it and conditioning it and seasoning it. And I do usually do that out in the wild, not relatively at my house. I bought this model because it does sit on my tailgate, and this is the 22-inch model. Now, when I'm using this, yes, it's very heavy. Yes, it's kind of a pain in the ass, but it simply cannot be overstated how nice it is, especially if you've camped on another stove before, to open this thing up and cook on it and actually, have a full cast iron seasoned griddle surface, especially when you're camping for a group more than 2 or 3 people. It doesn't feel like you have to take all morning to cook anything. If you're cooking for you, your wife or spouse, a whole bunch of kids, the neighbor's kids, the dog, this stove will do all of it and still have room on the stovetop somehow. Now, another thing to note is the utensils for the Blackstone are very large. So when it comes to packing space, I think this is the only thing that's relatively to size to a regular thing. The spatula is like this long. All the other accessories tend to take up a lot of space. And if you do really like your Blackstone, you tend to buy just a little bit too many accessories. Now, this stove definitely gets used the least. It lights very easily. Sometimes. There it goes. I'm sure that has nothing to do with it getting wet today. Now, speaking of wet, you really got to be careful with a cast iron of moisture. If you don't keep up with the seasoning, it does rust. If you leave water on top of it, it will rust even with the seasoning on it. And you generally just have to be a little bit more cautious. Now, on the upside, a cast iron surface, in my opinion, is the best cooking surface. I cook on cast iron pans inside of my house, out in the wild, out really anywhere. I think the only piece of cookware you need is a cast iron pan. Now, the Blackstone is very beloved. If you have the space for it, and you're not going to be jumping around everywhere, and you are kind of already used to cooking on cast irons, know how they work, I would say the Blackstone is a very, very good option. Even if you're just kind of cooking for yourself or cooking for just like you and a significant other, it is more of a luxurious choice because it is definitely not needed. It's very much overkill for just a couple people going out or just like an overnight trip. But at the same time, every single time I open this up, everybody crowds around me. Everybody wants food. I'm the chef of the camp, regardless of how good or not I actually am at cooking. And if you were not very good at cooking, rest assured you will open up your Blackstone and the nearest chef affiliated or cook associated person will walk over to you and ask to use your Blackstone. It does not fail. Half the time, I don't even have to cook. I think I'm good at cooking, but half the time, so many people are curious to just use my Blackstone that it's free labor. Now, wrapping up the video, my recommendation, of course, would be if you need the lightweight, if you need all the space, then go with a backpacking stove. Even if you're not backpacking, just because it's it's super super small, you can pack it in a glove box. If you have the space for a single burner stove, I think the single burner stove is amazing. It's got an amazing price point. It really can't be beat for what it does for the price that you have to pay for it. The Coleman two burner stove, it's my favorite stove, but I also think that they are a little spendy. I don't like the Ozark Trail one. It does work pretty good despite it being cheap. I do think the Coleman's a lot better, but the Coleman one, the nice one's $130. The cheap one's like 70 or 80. And those ones will work. They probably won't break on you unless you're throwing them. And if you know that you like camping already and you're not just trying to test the waters with a stove, the two burner stove, in my opinion, is the way to go. The main reason why I've used the single burner so much more than the double burner stove is mostly just because I don't have to carry fuel with me. That's more related to me using it for work lunches outdoors rather than camping. Now, the Blackstone, I like the Blackstone a lot. It's a great stove for the vast majority of people. Unless you have money, you like cast iron stoves, and you like a little bit of luxury, it's completely unnecessary, and I don't recommend it for a beginner. So that's going to wrap up the video. I'm going to be doing another video soon for my cutlery kit. I'm going to have that uploaded probably sometime the next week. If you guys have any other recommendations for me to do for a video for camping, or if you have any comments or concerns or questions as far as this video goes, please leave some comments down and I'll answer as many of them as best as I can. I'm a pretty small YouTuber, so I should be able to answer all the questions within a day or so. With that said, I hope you have a great day, and until next time, stay wild.